send the calling card?
Hi guys,
Just
back
keep
with
the
another
deadline in
video.
mind, okay?
This time we're going to level up Lady On in Kamoshida's palace. The goal here is to level up Lady On so that her persona can learn a new skill. It will do elemental damage, which is very much needed to clear the challenges in the new challenge mode in the Velvet Room, which is specific to Persona 5 Royale. So that mode focuses a lot on the baton pass and elemental damage done to enemies. So let's go ahead and try that out right now, and then we'll level up Lady On. Oh wait, this isn't the Let's Play video? Oh yeah, that's right. This is a review of the Audeze Mobius headphones. Hi! So obviously that wasn't a Let's Play video, but I will be reviewing the Audeze Mobius headset, which I was wearing in that short montage. The Mobius is a very unique headphone made by Audeze, who is based in Santa Ana, California. You guys know Audeze probably for their LCD series of headphones, like the LCD2 I have over there. So the Mobius was kind of a new project for them in terms of how they designed their headphones. So back in 2018, Audeze launched an Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign to ask backers for money in order to fund this project. This raised over $1.1 million, so it was quite a bit of money, and they were successful in that they got this out for backers in a reasonable time, which is kind of a rare thing to happen on Indiegogo, but they made it happen. So this was a very cool project for them to launch. Last year, before all of this COVID-19 pandemic stuff happened, I actually got to tour the facilities down at Audeze headquarters in Santa Ana, and I met up with Sankar, who is the CEO of Audeze, and he was very kind and gracious to allow me to come into the headquarters and kind of see the production of their LCD line of headphones. And at the time they were making the LCD1 headphone. Sankar kind of gave me some insight as to what the Mobius was originally designed for. So on the Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign, basically the entire campaign was catered towards gamers or gamer audiophiles or audiophiles in general, and they had this kind of unique approach to building a headset where it was emulating 3D sound, and it was able to have head tracking built into the headphone. So Sankar was explaining to me that actually various studios were asking Audeze to produce a headset that was able to, one, emulate 3D sound, so kind of a Soundstage where multi-channel speakers were kind of emulated, two, to have multi-channel audio support, and three, have head tracking. So those were kind of the three goals of the Mobius. So Sankar was explaining to me that these studios wanted mixing engineers to have the ability to listen to multi-channel audio in the headset form factor while still keeping a very high quality audio reproduction, and being able to hear their own mix within a virtualized room setting so that they can get an idea of how people will hear their sound within the soundscape. So that's kind of some interesting insight as to what the Mobius is and how it was developed. So this was a new approach for Audeze to go about this. In addition, this headphone is kind of different in terms of its assembly. So a lot of its parts are actually manufactured overseas from the United States, whereas most of Audeze's headphones are made in the United States in their Santa Ana location. So the Mobius has the drivers made in-house by Audeze, but they ship it to China to get it assembled. So this is a different way for Audeze to have their headphones made. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, since this headphone is now 2 years old, there have been multiple headphones of a similar type to the Mobius. So the HyperX Orbit and Orbit S are actually variants of the Mobius. In addition, Audeze has now just announced the Penrose and Penrose X series of headphones. Those headsets are very similar to the Mobius in that they use the same kind of design and driver assembly, but they are more made for gamers who use the Xbox and PlayStation consoles. So given that the Mobius was developed for mixing engineers and people in the studio, but they advertised it towards gamers and audiophiles on their Indiegogo campaign, this headset has many different things going on for it. So on the screen I'll show you basically a flow chart of how the Mobius can be used. Basically the Mobius can be used in three different connection methods. There's auxiliary input, and then there's USB and Bluetooth as well. The Bluetooth supports SBC, AAC, and LDAC audio. For all three options that the Mobius can be used, 3D head tracking can be turned on or off, and then 3D room emulation can also be turned on or off. Only through the USB option does the Mobius have the multi-channel audio support and the high-resolution audio file playback support. So I've been mostly using the Mobius with the USB audio decoding because that way it has the most amount of flexibility in terms of how it can be used for the different sound options. On top of all of that, Audeze supports 8 different EQ profiles that the Mobius can switch between. All of these EQ profiles are kind of tuned for a specific purpose. The default EQ is basically using Audeze's house sound, so that's kind of their own built-in EQ that they use. Whereas the music shifts the frequency response more like a Harman target, so it increases the bass and decreases the treble. Furthermore, Audeze actually updated their firmware to include a warm EQ profile, so the Mobius is firmware upgradable since this is a headset that has a built-in DAC and headphone amplifier. Audeze has pretty much full control of how the sound is processed. So given all of these different options, the Mobius is a very complicated headphone. This was developed for mixing engineers first and foremost, so it has a lot of different 3D emulation technologies built into this headset. And to make all of these options easier to manage, Audeze actually released a software that can be used to control every aspect of the Mobius. And in addition to the different options that I just mentioned and showed you on the screen, they have an option to change the head-related transfer function, the HRTF, which basically changes how the binaural sound works with the Mobius in terms of the interaural time difference between your two ears, as well as your head size to kind of compensate for that as well. On top of all that, Audeze has a room size slider which allows you to adjust how large the room is to change how much of the 3D reflections go in the virtualized room. Now for gamers, the software has the option to use gestures or head gestures to do certain actions. So for example, if you're playing Overwatch and you needed to do a melee, you can map your head to do this gesture, turn to the left, and it will do a melee attack. So if you're using a mouse and keyboard and then you need to do a quick melee, you can just quickly turn your head like that and it will perform a melee action. So it's a very interesting way to have kind of this immersion within gaming. Talking about the build quality of the Mobius, this is something that I think is one of the downsides of this headset in particular. Everything about the headphone is plastic, so the ear cups are plastic, the yokes are plastic, the adjustable headband is plastic, and I think the headband is also plastic. The Mobius can be twisted like so. I'm not really sure why anybody would want to do that, but that is feature of the Mobius is that it can be bent like that without any problems. The one good thing about the Mobius in terms of the build is the ear cushions on the top of the headband and the ear pads themselves. They're a memory foam that's surrounded by pleather. So although pleather is not very breathable, to me in this hot California weather, it hasn't been an issue. In addition, I can wear this headphone for many, many hours without getting any sort of discomfort despite this headphone being 350 grams. So it is kind of a heavy headphone, but the ear pads and the ear pad on the top really do make this headphone very comfortable to wear. Now, of course, since this is an Audeze headphone, this is using their planar magnetic headphone technology for their drivers. So their drivers use a Uniforce voice coil. So this is a planar magnetic design, so it needs a voice coil built onto the actual diaphragm so that it can move back and forth within the magnet array. Their magnets are using the flexor magnet, so it's a stronger than neodymium magnet. In addition to all of that, they have their phasor waveguides so that the sound wave is more linear when it exits the ear cup. To reproduce the lower frequencies better, Audeze has built-in bass ports on the back of the ear cups to allow the bass to escape from the ear cup assembly. And then because this is a headset that can be used via Bluetooth or USB, the built-in battery lasts about 10 hours with the Mobius, so it's actually pretty decent for a headphone that can be used on the go. So talking about the sound, I'm going to mostly talk about how it sounds via the USB and high-res mode on, and then I'll talk about how it sounds with the 3D and multi-channel audio. So with the high-res mode on, the Mobius to me is pretty bright on the default, which is again Audeze's house EQ sound, as well as the flat profiles. So I'm going to talk about the bass overall of the Mobius and then kind of shift to that problematic area. So starting with the bass, the Mobius uses these planar magnetic drivers, so it is a very capable headphone in terms of the bass. So it extends pretty far and it has very good texture and speed. So it's able to really have this nice visceral impact when you're listening to music. Moving on to the mid-range is also pretty flat to me. There's a very good amount of texture within instruments in the mid-range. However, when you're going to the upper mid-range, depending on the EQ you use, it can be either too harsh sounding or pretty neutral overall. So again, for the default and the flat EQ profiles, I think it's a little bit too harsh. It makes female vocals sound a little bit too shouty for me, and that makes it a very fatiguing experience. However, if you switch to the music profile, the upper mid-range is reduced a little bit so that it's not quite as fatiguing, which is awesome. And then moving on to the treble of the Mobius, I think the treble is really smooth overall. I do hear a peak within the treble, so it does bring some presence and shimmer to the treble, but it's nothing really too overdone, and I think it's a really nice overall tuning for the sound of the treble. So throughout the entire frequency response, the Mobius sounds pretty neutral overall. If you're using the music EQ, the upper mid-range is reduced a little bit and the bass is a little bit elevated, so it's kind of like a Harman target curve, if you will. Now, I actually did get to go to CanJam at RMAF 2018, and I went to the Audio Precision booth, and the folks at Audio Precision were willing to let me measure the Mobius. So on the screen you can see the different EQ profiles and different frequency responses of the different EQ profiles of the Mobius. This was before Audeze updated their firmware to include the warm profiles. But as you can see, it measures pretty neutral overall. These measurements are based on the diffuse curve measurements, so just keep that in mind when you're looking at these measurements. Because this was done at a CanJam at RMAF event, this is not an entirely accurate measurement because the environment wasn't exactly perfect. There wasn't an anechoic chamber, and the music being played from the other room across the hallway was still loud enough to be heard in the Audio Precision room. So again, these are not perfect measurements, but they give you a quick idea of how the different sound EQs are. So apart from the frequency response, I think the Mobius has fantastic imaging by itself. It's able to pick out instruments within the mix really easily from one another. This is maybe in part due to the planar magnetic design and being able to have a quick response to transients within the audio. And then the soundstage itself is not massive, but I think it's larger than the typical closed back headphones. So that is kind of an advantage of the Mobius, that despite having the 3D off, it does have a pretty large soundstage. And then the magic happens when you allow multi-channel audio and 3D audio and head tracking on the Mobius. So via USB, again, you can have 2-channel audio as well as multi-channel audio. So I'll talk about the 2-channel audio first. So basically every connection type of the Mobius can enable the 2-channel audio, and within that mode you can have the 3D head tracking and the room emulation sound. So even though you're playing 2-channel audio, the room emulation will sound like you're having a 3-dimensional room and there are speakers pointed at you and you're listening to those speakers. So when you have the head tracking on, you get kind of a sense of how that room will sound with the audio sources coming directly at you and staying there even if you turn your head, which is a very cool experience. It's as if you were in that speaker room. Similarly, when you're on the multi-channel audio and you're playing stereo music, again, it'll kind of emulate 2 speakers coming at you, and when you have head tracking enabled, you'll still have that audio coming directly at you even if you're moving your head. The cool thing about the 7.1 mode is that the sound emulation of the room is actually larger and more 3-dimensional than the 2-channel mode. So even though you're playing stereo audio, when you enable the room emulation, it sounds different between the 2-channel mode and the multi-channel mode. So it's a very cool experience to be able to hear kind of a more 3-dimensional room emulation in that regard. And this is enhanced even further when you're actually playing 7.1 audio, because the multi-channel USB support and the built-in DAC can decode up to 8 channels of audio. It really makes the experience immersive and very realistic sounding to me. I can demonstrate this with a Dolby Atmos 7.1 surround sound audio clip, and hopefully you guys can get a better idea of what I mean by these different modes. So first I'll do the 2-channel USB mode, and then I'll do the 7.1 channel USB mode. And again, this is with a true 7.1 channel audio input in terms of the audio. So you're getting the full experience between straight up stereo, which is only playing 2 channels of audio, versus Dolby's 7.1 channel.
This is Dolby Atmos, the world's first object-based cinematic audio. With powerful moving audio that transcends from channels to moving around you with pinpoint accuracy. Whether the soundscape sets the mood of a scene.
Your vehicle to the side of the road.
Whoa! What is this place? Whoa! Come on, you guys, let's go!
Or captures the full extent.
Do you want to know my secret?
Of nature's fury. This is Dolby Atmos, the world's first object-based cinematic audio. With powerful moving audio that transcends from channels to moving around you with pinpoint accuracy. Whether the soundscape sets the mood of a scene.
Your vehicle to the side of the road.
Whoa! What is this place? Whoa! Come on, you guys, let's go!
Or captures the full extent.
Do you want to know my secret?
Of nature's fury. This is Dolby Atmos, the world's first object-based cinematic audio. With powerful moving audio that transcends from channels to moving around you with pinpoint accuracy. Whether the soundscape sets the mood of a scene.
Your vehicle to the side of the road.
Whoa! What is this place? Whoa! Come on, you guys, let's go!
Or captures the full extent.
Do you want to know my secret?
Of nature's fury. This is Dolby Atmos, the world's first object-based cinematic audio. With powerful moving audio that transcends from channels to moving around you with pinpoint accuracy. Whether the soundscape sets the mood of a scene.
Your vehicle to the side of the road.
Whoa! What is this place? Whoa! Come on, you guys, let's go!
Or captures the full extent.
Do you want to know my secret?
Of nature's fury. This is Dolby Atmos, the world's first object-based cinematic audio. With powerful moving audio that transcends from channels to moving around you with pinpoint accuracy. Whether the soundscape sits the mood of the scene.
Pull your vehicle to the side of the road.
Whoa! What is this place? Come on, you guys, let's go!
Or captures the full extent
Do you want to know my secret?
of nature's fury. This is Dolby Atmos, the world's first object-based cinematic audio. With powerful moving audio that transcends from channels to moving around you with pinpoint accuracy. Whether the soundscape sits the mood of the scene.
Pull your vehicle to the side of the road.
Whoa! What is this place? Come on, you guys, let's go!
Or captures the full extent
Do you want to know my secret?
of nature's fury.
So hopefully through that demonstration you can kind of get an idea of how the Mobius sounds with the 3D emulation on and off, and with the head tracking on and off. Although the binaural microphones I was using are not perfect, hopefully that can help you understand how the 3D audio works with the Mobius. So with all of that being said, I hope you guys can get an appreciation of what the Mobius is in terms of a headset, and that it's not just your regular everyday gaming headphone. At the price point of $399, it is kind of an expensive headset, considering this is catered and marketed towards gamers. So if the price is an issue, then I recommend the HyperX Orbit and Orbit S headphones. Those are basically the Mobius without the Bluetooth capability. And then the Orbit does not have the head tracking enabled, but you can still use the 3D room emulation. In addition, Audeze just announced the Penrose and Penrose X headphones. Those do not have 3D audio at all, so it is a very different departure from what the Mobius is. So if you're just looking for the Audeze sound in terms of a gaming headset, then I recommend that. And it also includes a better boom microphone. As you guys can tell from this video, the boom mic is not that great. It does not have any sort of noise cancellation, and there's no wind filtration in terms of when I blow into the mic and it sounds like. But all in all, I think the Mobius is a terrific headphone, and having the 3D room emulation by itself is actually a really cool experience. Given my current living situation, I can't use speakers, let alone surround sound speakers. And so having that emulation within the headset is a really fun way to kind of get a sneak peek as to what I could be hearing. In addition, the head tracking is something that's out of your world. All of this head tracking is done with the Waves NX module. That's a built-in head tracking system. Although Waves NX is not new, they've been around for a while. Having that system built into a headset is pretty novel. So I hope you guys liked this video. I did try to be a little bit more creative in terms of how this video was done. So if you like this type of content, leave a like. That gives me some feedback as to what's working and what's not working. Also, if you want to subscribe and hit the bell icon, you'll be informed of more reviews like this that I'll do in the future. I do have more reviews lined up for you guys, so stay tuned for those. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video.